Hi there guys, and welcome to today's live stream. We're going to be talking about scoliosis, and just before we get into this, please do like, share or subscribe it if you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook. And remember, we're going to do the Q&A at the end of the video, as we always do. That's the reason we've been running, or one of the reasons we've been running these live streams, is obviously to bring you a piece of content every day. And today's topic is scoliosis. I'll touch on tomorrow's topic in a moment, but also to give you guys the opportunity to get a little bit of help from home. That's especially difficult during current times. So the Q&A that we do at the end of every single live stream is just there to help you guys. So the more you share this, the more we can help more people, and also the more questions we have, which may help you inadvertently through someone else's question. Now, tomorrow's live stream, just a little announcement on that. That's going to be on protein. We're actually shooting this a little bit earlier in the day. We're shooting it at 9 a.m. The main reason for this is that we're going to be in the clinic tomorrow afternoon working on some exciting things with regards to our new posture program that's going to be coming out as an add-on for the Back in Shape premium members. You get this completely for free. It's added into part of the membership, and that'll be live on the Facebook group, the closed Facebook group, and in the membership area on our website at some point over the coming weeks. So just going to be shooting the content for that tomorrow afternoon, which will be really, really exciting. So without further ado, let's get into scoliosis today. So I'm going to talk about this in quite a bit of detail to start with. There's a few topics that I want to cover for you guys, mainly to give you maybe a little bit more reassurance than anything else. And you can see on the board behind me there's a few little notes which I'll touch on in a moment. I'll go through some of the misconceptions as well, and then finish with a little exercise that you can do at home if you're concerned you have a bit of scoliosis. Even if you don't, it's a good one for just maintaining that sort of nice alignment, and you'll probably recognize these exercises. I'll just make a little reference here as well. I've been doing some research earlier today, and one of the institutes which I've known about for a very long time, they specialize in treating scoliosis. This is the Clear Institute in the US. They use things like bracing and, in more advanced cases, spinal surgery. But some of the information I'm talking about here today, you can read in a lot more detail on their website if it's particularly relevant to you. And they're dealing with particularly children with very, very severe forms of scoliosis. So some of the information is referenced from there today. So without further ado, which I'm going to say twice, let's get into the stuff behind me. So one of the big issues that I generally have as a practitioner in the clinic is a lot of patients come in and saying, I've got a curvature of the spine, and they get awfully distressed about it because they've been told by someone else. Maybe it's another osteopath or a chiropractor or a physio, or their GP said, oh, you've got curvature of the spine, you've got scoliosis, etc. And if you have a serious scoliosis, a proper scoliosis, it's actually really concerning because there are a number of health implications. The stats are not particularly good for those with severe scoliosis, and sometimes people just treat it as a binary statement. I either have scoliosis or I don't, and if I do, it's quite a depressing fact. So on the board behind me, I've got a few stats for you guys. Now, these are Cobb Angles. There's a slight difference in the example that I've used, but a Cobb Angle is essentially a measurement for scoliosis. And if you haven't had an X-ray, you're really, there's no use even talking about scoliosis. So if anyone has diagnosed you with a scoliosis without doing any X-rays, yes, there may be some element of scoliosis there or abnormal alignment from the front on, but you need to be very careful with being withholden to those diagnoses, because sometimes it can be muscular bulk creating illusions of a misaligned spine, and other times it can actually be that your spine looks straight but it's actually not, and there is a scoliosis there. So don't get bogged down in the finer details of scoliosis unless you've properly been diagnosed on a standing X-ray. The other thing that's important to note out is if you've had a lying down image versus a standing up image. Now, we covered this a touch on the core exercises. I think it was Friday's live stream, where the role of the core is to resist that compressive load of gravity. I did that really bad drawing on the whiteboard behind me, and showed that as your core presses down, that curve accentuates. So if we look at a scoliosis to try and analyze it on a lying down image, it's going to appear better for the patient than if they're standing up and weight bearing. You see how that curvature is exploited by gravity, and how some of the structures that should be supporting the spine aren't able to. So measuring things is really, really important, and measuring them in the right way is also important. I haven't got any specific figures or data on this particularly, but what I would say is those are patients that we have seen with scoliosis, objectively scoliosis, it tends to be the slimmer framed individuals. A little bit more commonly it seems to be ladies or young girls rather than men. But that's I haven't got any exact data for you guys, but definitely being a slighter frame does seem to result in more scoliosis. It may just be that if you have less muscle bulk to support this abnormal structure, you're going to struggle a little bit more, and I'll get into that towards the end of this video. Sorry about all the sirens. This is London and they seem to be going past like crazy on today's live stream. So what actually connotates a scoliosis? I've actually drawn them out on here, the angles, so you guys can get an appreciation for this. But I mentioned earlier that Cobb angles are used, and the reason I picked this spine up is a Cobb angle means they take a line along the vertebral body at the top of the curve and a line along the vertebral body at the bottom of the curve, and they do a perpendicular line, and then that kind of gives you a visualization of the curve, and then where those lines are, they go all the way out and all the way out, and they measure that angle, which is just off camera. Now I've used tangent angles. The measurements are fundamentally very, very similar anyway, but it just helps you guys visualize what this might mean in a spine, the different angles. Now, first and foremost, moderate is having greater than 25 degrees of curve, and that's this angle here. So if the spine is going up straight and then off, that's 25 degrees there. That is quite severe or quite notable in an individual, and I'll get to that a little bit later. Then in an adult, we've got 50 degrees, which is the first one here. This is going to be a degenerative scoliosis where the curvature you can see is quite severe, the pivot point. And then in kids and teenagers or adolescents, it's considered to be severe if it's 40 degrees or more. Not too much difference there in terms of how this might look in an individual standing there. But this gives you that understanding of what this scoliosis actually is. And a slight deviation to the left or to the right is not a scoliosis. And it really frustrates me when patients come in all bothered that they've been diagnosed with a scoliosis. We do the standing up x-rays and it's marginally off one side to the other. Really not significant. And one of the big problems with back pain in general is the mental approach to these things. How does the diagnosis of this problem, maybe it's a slip disc or maybe it's a scoliosis, how does it affect the psychology of the patient? And certain triggers, certain conditions when they're diagnosed do affect the mentality of the patient, and I think that can be really disempowering in a lot of ways. So taking a step back and going, well, what does this diagnosis actually mean? And this practitioner or person is saying to me, I've got a scoliosis. Well, how do they know and how have they classified me according to these things just behind me? And I will reiterate one more time, just for clarity, this is a tangent angle representation of those degrees. A Cobb angle is slightly different, but it will result in the same sort of image, and that's not really for you if you're watching this as a sort of a patient or a layperson. That's for a practitioner if they're watching this and want to take issue with that slight statement. So I just want to clarify that for the start. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail on treating severe scolioses, mainly because it's not the kind of patients that we see, and if you do have a severe scoliosis, then it's most likely appropriate that you see someone like these guys at the Clear Institute. Some of the severe scoliosis will require things like surgery. That being said, I am aware of patients that don't have surgery and we treat them, and although it's a difficult condition to manage, you may as well do some work to help yourself, because that is really the only thing you can do in these sorts of cases when the scoliosis is severe, and you need to take accountability for that. There are things that you can do to really improve that. Now, when it comes to actually treating patients with scoliosis in the clinic, the most important thing, I kind of discussed this last time as well, is doing physical exercise. It's the fact that your spine has a difficult time dealing with the load of gravity, because instead of being nice and straight, it's got this bend here, and when gravity is acting all day, it's just making it worse and worse and worse. And if we have our muscles to try and act a little bit more in a stabilizing way, they're going to at least help guard against that scoliosis worsening over time. And there are a few other exercises that you can do as well, but I would encourage anyone with scoliosis to really work on their posture, which is quite coincidental that we're working on that posture program later tomorrow afternoon. and work on just building up that core stability and protecting their spine. One thing I'd really advise against patients say is time and time again when they come in with these sorts of issues is, oh, should I carry my handbag on the other shoulder for the next 6 months? Don't do that. Please don't do that. The big problem that you get is you get ligament changes as well as muscular changes, and it's the ligaments, I think, that really influence these issues, these alignment issues, a lot more so. And if your spine bends here like so, and then you try and do pop the handbag on the other side, all you end up doing is creating a secondary curve somewhere else. You do need a degree of pivoting. That's how things like the braces work. So the braces are devices that they give for younger kids when they've been diagnosed with scoliosis, which is a very hard plastic kind of thing that goes around your rib cage, and it uses pivots here and here on the apexes of the curve to actually try and push that spine back to the middle. But I haven't been too impressed with the patients I've seen that have had those for long periods, and it does create quite a degree of stigma around, you're a teenager wearing these sorts of braces, and it's difficult for patients to deal with, especially if they're younger teenagers. So, but that's how they work. They use a pivot point, and you just carrying a bag on the other side is not necessarily going to create that pivot point. It's more likely to create more trouble. So a focus on moving back towards the center is going to be more helpful by holding your posture more steadily and working symmetrically on the core muscles. Now, I did see something in our membership site, I believe, or a question in the last week or two about my practitioner said that I've got a scoliosis, so I shouldn't work my core, or something like that. I can't remember where I heard that. It was from someone I spoke to. Anyway, if you have a scoliosis and someone says don't do any exercises or don't work your core because you're going to make it worse, that's really, really bad advice, because what it leads to is we've got an unstable skeletal structure, and the advice is there to not do any physical exercise. So you've got that unstable structure that is slowly going to be supported by less and less muscle mass. You want to try and maintain a stable, neutral stance when you're doing your exercises, build up reasonably symmetrically, use mirrors where possible to look at your form and look at your technique when you're doing certain exercises, and that's a really, really important part of looking after yourself if you do have a scoliosis. Now, ultimately, it is the ligament balance, etc., that really maintains this scoliosis. So this next exercise that I'm going to talk about with you guys is really a very familiar one for many of you if you've been watching these YouTube live streams, and if you're a member of the Back Shape membership site, then these exercises will be very, very familiar. But I'll jump to those right now, and it is the towel exercises. Now, this coincidentally, not by design, is actually one of the ones that is recommended on the Clear Institute, and they recommend that you hold for 20 minutes. Now, we do a lot of spinal remodeling in the sagittal curves, which is the side-on curves, which you can see me here. It's supporting my neck, it's supporting my lower back lordosis, but in the process of me lying down flat with those curves reinstalled, my rib cage has to move to a flat point. One of the problems with scoliosis is, although it goes to the side, it also gets a bit of twisting, so you notice your rib cage on the back sticks out a little bit more if you have a more severe or even not, sorry, if you have a moderate scoliosis. Or severe, it's going to be a lot more notable, but you get that twisting of the rib cage to compensate with scoliosis. So when you're actually lying flat here, it's forcing your rib cage to move to a flat position whilst maintaining the normal lordotic curves in the neck and in the lower back. And this reminds me of some research I was reading talking about cervical remodeling when we're improving the side-on neck curve, which has nothing to do with scoliosis. It's the alignment of the neck so it absorbs shock. We've talked about this before. And they found that after improving the neck curve, the process of lying in this position here, just using the neck device, it's slightly different to a towel, but we don't need to get into that, actually found that it reduced the twisting in the thoracic spine, the scoliosis, the scoliotic deformities as well. And that was just a coincidental finding. But doing this setup with the towel underneath the lower back and underneath the neck helps just stabilize the ligaments in your spine, put them in a nice neutral position, as close to neutral as is possible given your scoliosis or your misalignments, and you're holding it there for 20 minutes. You may have heard me mention 20 minutes numerous times before, because it's a very key figure when it comes to remodeling the spine and changing ligament length, etc. So holding the spine in this position for a long period helps the ligaments adapt. Muscles respond differently. They respond to stretch and strain. These ligaments need sustained time under tension for them to start to remodel, and this is a really good exercise. And even if you're one of the guys that are doing these exercises at home, particularly the lower back towel, as part of the membership site and you feel like you've got a bit of a scoliosis, you can by all means do this. May not be the best time to do it if you're in back pain right now, but as a long-term strategy, it's very relaxing, very, very comfortable. You can have the feet up like I do, knees bent, or you can have your legs flat out. That's not too much of an issue. And you can just relax into that position for 20 minutes. You've got to make sure you get off the towels correctly afterwards, but this is a really, really good position to help your spine feel what it's like to be in the right position, that nice smooth curve with the spine relatively straight through the middle. You'll also notice the way in which the towel sits on your shoulders and the way the towel sits on your pelvic girdle, if there's any sort of scoliotic changes, because you'll feel how uneven it is and you'll try and be able to get it to feel straight and be perpendicular to your waist when you're actually doing this stretch. So really, really interesting one, really good one. I think out of all the stretches that you could do, this would be a very, very useful one because it's so easy to do. It's symmetrical, it's bringing your body back to a center and will be really, really relaxing for many of you doing this. So that's pretty much it for today's live stream on scoliosis. Just to recap a few of the things, that it's a moderate to severe scoliosis when it looks like the first red line on the one behind me. So if you're not that severe, please disregard that diagnosis of scoliosis. It's not significant, and you really want to focus on keeping your body in good shape, building a good, strong muscular system, and really being as fit and as healthy as you can be, reducing excess body mass, anything that increases the compressive load through your spine. Treatment can always help those sorts of things. So from an osteopath, chiropractor, physio, to help support your body, because people with scoliosis, if it is a little bit more severe, do require a little bit more support just because of the abnormal mechanical stress and strain on the body, and it's much better to have a proactive approach to treatment if it is bothering you. And then finally, this stretch that's on the screen right now is an awesome one, and I'd suggest even if you've got any minor misalignments and you feel like you're a little bit wonky, this is a really good way to just relax in a nice neutral position, supporting the disc health of the lower back and the neck at the same time. And it's generally very, very comfortable as well. So if we pop into questions to finish things up. Laura.
Okay, great. We've got a question here from Ollie. Can you develop a scoliosis from everyday life or from work, or is it genetic?
So there is a lot of talk around sort of childhood scoliosis. So a lot of there is sort of that juvenile onset scoliosis. That being said, our bodies are malleable. If we can change a scoliosis through regular activity and specific stretches like the one we just had on the board, on the screen, and we also know from in the clinic that we can change the alignment of the neck and the lower back in the side-on view. Yes, through repetitive stress and strain, you can influence the alignment of your spine. Also through traumas. Certain traumas will lead to changes in the spine. If you had a crush fracture, for example, or something much less severe, and it caused the vertebral body to go from a square to a triangle, that's not a triangle, that would be a triangle, then that would obviously give you that scoliotic change very, very quickly, but you wouldn't be watching this video if that was you happening right now.
Could it also be through sort of change the way you were in the womb, or when you were a baby? Yeah,
so if you're a womb twin sharing the womb, that could affect your spinal development. There are other conditions. Some aspects of scoliosis isn't necessarily that well understood as well. And it's going to be accelerated through your growth spurt years. The main reason being, if there's that slight deviation, say it's off to the side a little bit through here, and then you grow really quickly, you're going to get the muscles on the one side are really going to restrict, and with that extra compression through the spine, as the muscles don't want to stretch out, it's really going to help influence that scoliosis for the worse. So it is something that I think that I was reading through 11.7. I think 11.7 years was when the scoliosis really do start to accelerate. If you're an adult with scoliosis, it's probably going to be rather stable. And as long as you are sensible and you're aware of it, and you do some of these conscientious practices, such as keeping good muscle mass, such as regular exercise, such as a low, not excessively overweight, equally not too light, because if you're too light, then you maybe don't have enough muscle mass to support you. Then you really should be able to get on top of it, and it shouldn't be a problem. And I know people with scoliosis outside of the clinic, and as long as you look after yourself, it makes a massive difference.
Okay, brilliant. Karen's asked, what particular core exercises would you recommend if you have a scoliosis? And I'll just add on to that, if you have had an x-ray and you know which way your scoliosis is bending, should you do more on the other side to counteract?
I don't think a lot of people are specific enough in terms of athletic ability, put it that way, to be specific enough to start to self-treat. I just don't. Practically speaking, I don't think that's possible. For the average person, there are exceptions to that. Perhaps if you were a chiropractor yourself, had a very detailed understanding and had that scoliosis, then you might be able to be a little bit more specific with the way in which you choose to do certain exercises. But I would say that the exercises that would be perfect for this would be the exercises in the Back in Shape membership site. They're basic core exercises that provide a improved core support, which is going to help hold that towards the middle by exerting transverse pressure through the spine. It's going to stop the effect of gravity squashing down on the spine, and then slowly it's building in load bearing to that strengthening process to protect your core, and it's integrating your core with the other muscles further afield, up the middle back, up to the upper back, as well as down into the legs. So a core, the core exercises would be just those in the Back in Shape membership site. They work perfectly, and you can join that for free, and there's obviously got the paid membership as well for the Facebook group and the other bits and pieces. So that would be the best course of action with regards to core exercises for sure. The one thing I didn't mention earlier on in the live stream is also the prevalence of leg lengths. Certain people will have leg length issues, which mean that one leg is shorter or longer than the other, and when that's significant, it will obviously lead to the scoliosis as well.
And if it is a leg length problem, can it be fixed pretty easily by having
If it's a leg length problem, you really need to diagnose it very early on. So you're talking about when you're a toddler, really. If not, then a lot of the changes will have taken place. And if you're talking about sort of a middle-aged person, then you want to play around with it. Definitely experiment with heel raises because they're very inexpensive, and you can fiddle with them and see if that influences the scoliosis, and it really may do, and that's really positive. So there are definitely proactive steps you can take, but depending on the severity of that tilt through the pelvis dictates how effective you can be with the leg lengths. But if it's greater than sort of a centimetre, you are going to be in a bit of difficulty or a spot of bother trying to effectively compensate for that in the legs. And if we're talking about leg lengths as well, they need to be leg lengths measured on an x-ray standing up, not on a lying down x-ray, and not some guy with a tape measure going down the side of your leg. That is inaccurate, it's not helpful, and there's so many issues with that. I won't even bother to I mean, I will go into them actually, because sometimes you go into places and they pull your legs and they say, oh, this leg's longer than the other. I've done those techniques. I've known people that have done them for years. It's so easy to just stand there and go, well, let's just move the pelvis a little bit here. The patient get on from the other side of the bench, and all of a sudden the other leg's longer. So many different things. It's really inaccurate.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Then Joe's got a question. Should I do this exercise? I think he's talking about the towel exercise only if I have a scoliosis, or even if I just think I have one.
I'd say actually
what if you don't even have one? Can you do it?
Yeah, I think it's a really good exercise period. Mainly because think about how much of the day you might spend sat in some sort of contorted, weird position that's not straight, and actually just jumping on here. Maybe it's not for the full 20, but maybe it's just for 5 to 10, just to put your spine back to a nice square position. It really wouldn't be a bad idea, whether or not you've got back pain, whether or not you've got misalignments, and whether or not you've got a scoliosis. It is a nice exercise. It's a position that your spine wants to be in, but especially right now while we're sat down, people are sort of sat on one side watching TV for 3 hours or whatever it may be. Getting in that position, I'll just quickly jump back to it there, getting in this position on the screen with your spine in a neutral position, both with the nice curves in the neck and in the lower back, and straight-ish through the middle. Well, it will be straight as long as you don't have a scoliosis. It'll be straighter than it would be if you do have a scoliosis. It is a really, really good position to be in without a shadow of a doubt, so it doesn't matter who you are. I think this is a fantastic exercise for you.
Fabulous.
Any other questions?
That's it today.
Awesome. Well, I hope you guys found today's video on scoliosis helpful, and I would really encourage you, if you do have any x-rays or anything like that, to look at the board behind me and just understand what it actually means to have moderate or severe scoliosis. Anything that's mild is really manageable effectively through the right sort of exercises and the practices that we've discussed in today's live stream. And just remember that tomorrow's live stream will be at 9 a.m. It's going to be on protein, particularly should be interesting. It's one that you guys have asked for, and that's mainly because we're excited to be shooting and filming some of the content for the upcoming posture series that's going to be launched in the coming weeks or so. So super exciting. Anyway, have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. for the live stream.